So I'm glad to see you all. Glad you're all here. You made it to the right place. So we will just take a couple of moments to breathe and get here, because I need that. And I invite you to put names in the chat of people you are wishing healing energy to. And I'm going to share my screen. And I'm sorry, I don't have the music queued up. I apologize for that, but I will share my screen, and I invite everybody who wants to sing along. And I wonder if I have a volunteer who'd like to unmute and sing for us. Anybody?
Yeah, I can do it.
Thank you.
Mi shebeirach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Thank you very much, Larry. And we certainly wish refuah shlema to everyone in need of healing. And on some level, probably we are all in need of some healing. So let's take another moment to settle. And we will appreciate that we are here. So this week's Parsha is Truma, and it's filled with instructions for building the tabernacle. So the first thing I want to make clear is that the tabernacle was viewed as a dwelling place for God. It's not a sanctuary like we have in our synagogues today. So it was designed to be a place where the people could hold God close. There are lots of, and there's a piece about that I just find so interesting. It's this whole notion of God being everywhere, and at the same time, we need God close by, and we need to hold God close and have this tabernacle where God could be. So the need for that personal God just really stands out for me in terms of the Parsha writ large. The other thing about this Parsha is that there's a great deal of specificity about the kinds of gifts that people should be bringing. And in order to create this tabernacle. And the themes that really came up for me around all of that, besides this transcendental and personal God, is the notion of the generosity that was displayed in terms of all of the gifts that were brought, and the working together, the community building aspect, if you will, of building this tabernacle together. So I just thought all of that was very interesting and kind of timely. In this week's essay in the Musar Torah commentary, written by Rabbi Joseph Metzler, he focused on nedivut, generosity, which is clearly an important theme in this parsha. And we're going to talk about that at some length. But I wanted to point out that from another source, I read Rabbi Pamela Wax explaining the word truma, which she says refers to a contribution that elevates, that it lifts up both the giver and, she was talking about it in connection to this parsha. She said it lifts up the giver and it elevates God as well. And as I was thinking about what she wrote, supporting her thesis about truma being a gift that elevates, I was thinking that it really elevates both the giver and the receiver. The receiver doesn't have to be God. But if the gift is given in a kind of wholehearted way, it can be very elevating to the person who is receiving the particular gift. The parsha starts at chapter 25, verse 1, and verses 1 and 2 read as follows. The Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart is so moved." So everyone is contributing the gifts, and everyone whose heart is so moved. That means that it's a free will offering. This is not a tax. This is people bringing gifts because they want to. They brought what they had: metals, yarns, skins, wood, oil, spices, stones. Those were all required for building the tabernacle, but the people brought these with a full heart. And that's why it's elevating. It's not done begrudgingly. Rabbi Metzler, in his commentary, suggested that we should think expansively of truma. not limiting our generosity to material needs or physical goods, but thinking in terms of behaviors, visiting the sick, showing hospitality, having patience, any kind of giving of yourself, he was saying really is truma also. So giving time and attention or effort can be a huge gift to somebody. Sharing wisdom, being a mentor or a guide. So in this way of looking at things, everybody has gifts that they can give. We don't have to be limited to the material goods. So everybody has the ability to be generous. And that's exactly what happened in the Parsha, because the people who had the items that were necessary for building the tabernacle brought those gifts, the physical goods. And the people who had skills used those physical goods to build, to create. So we had the people who were weaving and the people who were doing metalwork or woodworking, and those were also absolutely acts of generosity. The other thing that Rabbi Metzler pointed out that I found so fascinating was that there are instructions, very detailed instructions for building the tabernacle. But one of the instructions was about planks made of acacia wood, and that how they were to be affixed to each other so that they would interlock and support the structure. And there's great detail and how this interlocking system is to be created. And the Hebrew word for these interlocking projections is yadot, which means hands. So we have this wonderful metaphor for hands connecting these planks of wood to hold up the structure. And we can think of that as the hands of the person who gives, who's generous, and the hands of the person who receives. So we can give graciously and receive graciously. And they both need each other. The giver needs a recipient. And the person in need needs somebody to be generous. So when I read that, I was reminded of a personal incident that happened with me when I was still living in Cleveland. Rabbi Steve Seeger, who was the rabbi of the Reconstructionist Havurah that I belonged to at the time, later known as Kol Halev Reconstructionist Congregation, really gave me a very good instruction about being able to receive gifts. When my husband was ill, people wanted to be helpful and offered to do things like bring dinners. And I kept declining because I wasn't sick. I could still make dinner, it was that kind of thing. And Rabbi Steve pointed out to me that people have a need to be helpful, that they have a need to show that they care, and they wanted to be generous, and that I had a job to do. And my job was to create the space for people to be able to do a mitzvah. They needed to feel useful, and I needed to allow that. I needed to create that opportunity. So I needed to be generous in my accepting. They needed to be generous in their offering. And that was a very, very important lesson for me to learn. I know I'm not the only one who had a hard time accepting acts of generosity and kindness. And that's something that we need to remember. So with that, I invite you to adjust your seat so that you're sitting in a relaxed yet alert position. And I invite you to take a nice, deep, cleansing breath, inhaling fully and slowly exhaling. One or two more of those at your own pace. And as we move into our meditation, I'm going to read a piece that was created from some wisdom from Jon Kabat-Zinn. Generosity is another quality which, like patience, letting go, non-judging, and trust, provides a solid foundation for your mindfulness practice. You might experiment with using the cultivation of generosity as a vehicle for deep self-observation and inquiry, an exercise in giving. A good place to start is with yourself. See if you can give yourself gifts that may be true blessings, self-acceptance, or some time each day with no purpose. Practice feeling deserving enough to accept these gifts without obligation. Simply receive from yourself and from the universe. So I invite you to begin to take some deeper breaths. Slowly and gently begin to bring your attention outward. And as you return to the room, I am going to usher you in with a poem from Pat Schneider, The Patience of Ordinary Things. It is a kind of love, is it not? How the cup holds the tea, how the chair stands sturdy and foursquare, how the floor receives the bottom of shoes or toes, how soles of the feet know where they're supposed to be. I've been thinking about the patience of ordinary things, how clothes wait respectfully in closets, and soap dries quietly in the dish, and towels drink the wet from the skin of the back, and the lovely repetition of stairs. And what is more generous than a window? So I invite you, as I turn off the recording, to look out the nearest window and see what is really generous out there.